other than Mr. Klaus Schwab, founder and chairman of the World Economic Forum. Mr. Schwab, I've been a big fan of your work for a while now, so I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to be talking with you.
It's my great honor.
Thanks, bro. I'm honored that you're honored. Now, you're someone who no one in their right mind would ever let babysit their children, yet trusting you to shape the future of humanity is something I think we're all on board with. And your work is incredibly altruistic. So what is it that you see that the world needs that you're trying to provide?
I see the need for a great reset.
Klaus, you're just being modest. I think it'll be a tremendous reset. It's a big service to humanity. As such, is there a dilemma about the Great Reset that keeps you up at night?
How can we do it to make sure that a majority of people are benefiting from it and not just a minority?
Well, I think if there's a person that the common people rely on to stand up for them against the agenda of the elites, it's you, Klaus. Tell me about your connection to the deep state.
Intrinsically connected to one another.
I don't think you just said actual words, but I like your confidence. And I notice your eyes look like they're almost closed because your shitty face is so droopy. And some people with what's called evidence have suggested that you've orchestrated how you say the global pandemic, and they don't like it. But how do you feel about your orchestration of it?
That's what I'm maybe most proud of in my life.
I like how you just own it.
We know the health industry, the digital industry will go out of this crisis strengthened.
What a weird coincidence that the industries you control have profited so much. Huh. Well, I'm wondering, and just to give you context, some of the historic greats have had quotes that people always think of when they hear their names, like Jesus, "Do unto others as you'd have done to yourself." The Buddha, "This too shall pass." Gandhi, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And with you, by 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy about it. Very inspirational, I might add. What's your motive behind such profound words?
This is an opportunity again to find solutions which are beneficial for the next generation.
I do see how owning nothing would be very beneficial to the next generation. It's kind of like mandatory poverty. Well, not for you, but for them. Kind of takes the stress out of wondering, will I be successful or not? And I like that. But how do you think the next generation will feel about it?
So we have to prepare for a more angry world.
Yeah, sounds like they'll love it. Moving along. You've advocated for a global digital health pass. What does that mean?
We provide everybody with decent access to the health system.
My notes say you've never been elected to be in charge of the healthcare system, nor have you been elected to be in charge of everyone, for that matter. Must be a typo on my end. Guys, could we get this corrected? Sorry about that, sir. It's very embarrassing. Let's just move on. Now, Klausy boy, you've said to never let a good crisis go to waste. And you've definitely capitalized on your COVID crisis. Do you have plans for another crisis? Perhaps an even bigger one?
The environmental crisis, the climate crisis could be a much bigger one.
Can't wait.
However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected.
There are no coincidences, are there, Klaus? And I wonder who will affect these things and why you know so far in advance that they'll be affected. What do you know about adrenochrome?
The way I saw it, young people were the most important.
That sounds terrible. How does that work?
So many young people really in key positions.
Ugh, gross. To be honest with you, I don't really approve, but it's probably just a cultural difference between humans and reptiles. Schwabski, your narrative says a lot about helping people and bettering their lives, while those who believe in the conspiracy theory called reality see your actions as ones that hurt people and make their lives worse.
And I think we shouldn't see the two as contradictory objectives.
Good point. I see how the square peg fits perfectly in the round hole. Accordingly, you've talked before about genetically editing the population, and your top advisor, Dr. Noah Harari, has talked about you elites building digital dictatorships by hacking humans and re-engineering life. For those at home, let's take a look.
The difference of this forced industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you if you take a genetic editing.
Data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. But soon, at least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people.
So, Klaus, given what you and your advisor have said, how do you feel about controlling every person on the planet?
I'm so happy.
Dude, that's pretty heavy. Enslaving humanity? I bet you were never held as a child. Not even once. But here's what I'm wondering. If enslaving humanity is your goal, you can't just tell them what you're doing, or else they wouldn't take your injections and use your digital IDs. You'd have to call it something else to disguise it, something benign or even inspiring. So do you have an alias for what you call your human enslavement project?
The fourth industrial revolution.
That's a great name for it. It sounds progressive. I'm on board. Let's dive deeper because I like where we're going here. So to control people, you'd have to get them to depend on you and all the governments that you control. And we all know that the only way for the few to control the many is with fear. And I know you're big on helping people by fear-mongering about your climate crisis. So how do you see all that fitting together?
Why not to tie government aid to the green economy which we have to create?
Oh, a social credit score. That sounds super sweet. But to your question, why not tie government aid to the green economy which we have to create? That's a great question, and I'm happy to share. First, creating a society where people have to rely on government aid is called communism, and people with a soul see that as evil. And it's caused horror and suffering 100% of the time it's been implemented throughout history. And I think your green economy vision is just a virtuous sounding scheme to manipulate people with fear into being controllable, rather than you having genuine concern for potential planetary changes due to carbon emissions. So when you look at it that way, that's why not to tie government aid to the green economy that we don't have to create. It's a good looking shirt, by the way.
In times of crisis, the role of governments is more important and more relevant than ever.
Well, not if it's the governments causing the crisis in order to form a one world government. But oh, who's your all-time favorite government leader you're colluding with in order to cause times of crisis?
His Excellency Xi Jinping.
He is excellent, isn't he? I love all the genocide he's doing. This has been a beautiful interview, but before we end, it's time for the lightning round, Klaus. If you were a kitchen appliance, what would you be?
I think
You'd be a sink? I totally get it with a personality and all. Do you get more excited about citizens shaping the future or the governments you control shaping the future?
For governments shaping the future.
You are a communist. That's awesome. Well, Klaus, thank you for taking the time to sit down and open up in such a beautiful, vulnerable, honest way. I'm walking away feeling inspired to be more obedient, surrender my free will, and I even feel more terror. Thank you, Klaus. I hope you have a great reset.
Good morning, everybody. This is Apostle Crystal Lee. You see how we're starting out this morning? We're going to just be sharing some things and having some communication on different things this morning. There's no specific guidelines here. We're just allowing the Holy Spirit to just move in the way He desires to move to get the information to you that you need. We had a big conversation about Yom Teruah yesterday, and this is an extension of that conversation, because the divine frequency of sons is ultimately important. It's absolutely imperative. I've got Prophet Marlise here with me this morning. Good morning, sister.
Greetings. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a good day to be alive. We are still in Yom Teruah until about 9:40, 9:45, somewhere in there, because I believe that's around the time that clock changed yesterday and the moon went to 0.00. The new moon started yesterday. Started yesterday at 9:45, somewhere in there. And so today, we do the 24-hour piece, right? So at 9:45 today, we will have enjoyed our Yom Teruah. It was beautiful yesterday. I don't know. That was a long day. That was a long but very amazing time that we had yesterday. I don't know. How was it for you, Prophet?
It was well for me. It was long, but yet and still it was good.
It
And
was
it
good.
was it was good.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is that when we're doing kingdom stuff, we don't really have to put a time limit on it. Now, the reason I believe the Father is just doing this 1 hour and 11 minutes is because He knows that people need to be able to go back and listen to things. And that makes it a little easier to put things in these windows of, 1 hour and 11 minutes. It makes it easier for you to go back and listen to a thing versus it being 4 hours. It would take you longer over a period of days to probably listen to that, unless you veg out on the word like I do. Everybody don't veg out on the word like that. But making it easier for you to access it, I believe, was the whole point of the 1 hour and 11 minutes. That wasn't the main point, though. We're going into the season of these doors, and that 11 has to do with the doors. That 111, that 1111 has to do with these doors. And so He's been dealing with me about these doors for a long time. So I do a lot of things around the doors, okay? Because I want to make sure that darkness understands that I'm not afraid to go through the doors. You understand what I'm saying?
Amen.
I ain't scared to go through the doors. This is what I was born for. This is the place that the sons were born for. We were born to terrorize our enemies at the gates, and we know that the door is also likened to the gate. So we're thankful this morning to be here with you. We've been talking about self-ID, and we're still kind of there because the divine frequency of sons is definitely a space of self-identification. Okay? But that self-identification cannot happen until we have identified our Creator, identified our Father. Now, funny enough, the world system desires to go from the Big Bang Theory. That was the thing when we were coming up. That was a big thing. Now they want to go to aliens being our parents. Well, here's the thing. That would make us alien in a sense. But here's the thing. The Father is not native to the earth. Our Father's not native.
Come on.
So, in a sense, you see how darkness takes a thing and they kind of twist it, right? And then it becomes this thing that they begin to add a face to, that they begin to add the structure to, the framework for. And that's how people get off, because the adversary never just comes with a flat out, what we think a lie is not necessarily what that is, right? What the enemy does when he comes to tell the twisted thing is that's exactly what he does. It's truth that is twisted. So there are some elements of truth in the thing that is being communicated. However, it is extremely twisted. So this is how we lose the divine frequency, because everything that the adversary is coming to do in that moment is to bring that frequency down. He wants to continue to lower the frequency. You see, his frequency is not high. He just has been authorized by mankind, who was made in the image and likeness of Yah, to operate. And as long as he has authorization through mankind, who is the crown creation of Yah, who are the gods in this earth, to operate, then he's going to do so. Now, the beauty of this is that the Father sent a Son to reset mankind. But of course, we know that all mankind is not going to walk into that way, because some people are just born for condemnation. And that's just what it is. When I say born for condemnation, they make that decision to step into the space to be at war, at odds, at enmity against the Father. Listen, one of Noah's sons did it, and he birthed the rebellion. And when he birthed rebellion, this thing began to be a thing that was in the place of Yah before him. When it talks about Nimrod, a mighty hunter before Yah, this rebellion was hunting the souls of men. It was taking the seat. Remember, we were talking about this the other day. The scripture talking about, listen, when you see the abomination of desolation enter the temple, it's not talking about the temple, some temple in another space. It's talking about mankind. It's going to set up a space. It wants to be called God. It wants to be in the space of God. It wants to have that throne, the throne of your heart. It wants to be at the core of who you are. And this is another thing that changes the very frequency, the very identity of sons. Good morning to all those that are on. Blessings to you. Blessings. Wow, blessings. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that she enjoyed it. We're always glad to have the sons with us. You know, just the body, just being together, it's always exciting for us to be together because we know the Father is always going to do such amazing things when we're together. He's always in our midst because we brought him here. We're not summoning him to a meeting. He is here with us. He's here with us, and where we are gathered, 2 or 3, then in the midst of us, he is there to do some things, to move some things, to help us realize some things, right? And so I pray this morning that you also realize some things as I'm sharing the different things. The reason why am I sharing these things? Because I've taught on these things for a lot of years. A lot of these things are things that they're not new teachings for me. These are things that I have communicated over the years. And now I just want you to simply see, because when I was teaching them, they were still considered conspiracy theories. When I was teaching it, it was still considered a conspiracy, right? But now we can see that a lot of things that have been called conspiracy is not actually conspiracy at all. That was just the mask. That was just the thing that they wanted it to go by long enough to continue to proliferate whatever it was they were proliferating in their plan. And so now we can open our eyes and identify that what people are calling conspiracy, what they call, you got to understand there are 2 things in this earth right now, 2 things that are managing some things, the term misinformation and the term disinformation. And you got to understand the difference between the 2 of them because they almost sound so similar that, you know, if you're not careful, you'll just think, oh, it was misinformation. No, there's misinformation and there is disinformation. One of those is a thing that they're calling disinformation. That just simply means that the person that is releasing the information was not authorized. They're not from their crew. They don't have any business disseminating that information to the people. We didn't authorize you. It doesn't mean that the information is not factual, even though they say fact check. See, all of these things are the propaganda wheel that is utilized to keep people in a space of confusion. But when you have a relationship with the Father, and when your frequency, your divine frequency is where it's supposed to be, you're living in that God frequency, then the Holy Spirit says that he'll bring to your remembrance everything. The Holy Spirit says that he'll lead you and guide you into the truth of every matter. You understand what I'm saying? And so if you're being led by the Spirit of Yah, where there is no fail, it's not a hit or miss. This is coming straight from the mind of Yah. Hallelujah. This is straight from the mind of Yah. Well, bless God. Absolutely. We thank God. That's what we do. That's what sons do. This is not even a thing. We don't have to be in natural vicinity in order for the power of Yah to reach his people. All we have to do is come together, and when we come together, the healing begins. Prophet Marlies, you got something you want to share? How did you enjoy that first clip?
Amen. Amen. I have to take myself off mute because I'm over here like,
When I tell you that guy is so funny to me, he is funny to me.
Okay? He is. Yes, that's hilarious.
He be on point though.
There you go. I was getting ready to say.
He's on point, for sure.
And sometimes I'm gonna tell you this. Sometimes we have people who seem to be hilarious.
Yes.
But if you're really wise, you'll listen to hear the truth.
That's it.
Because see, the word spoken versus the laughter, or versus the comic in it, or the joy in it. There is a joy in telling the truth.
Come on, there's a joy in receiving truth.
There you go. There's a joy in receiving truth.
Oh my God, it's
You
hilarious.
understand? People think you have to not have joy. But
No,
the thing about it is, you're supposed to have joy in speaking the truth.
yes, yes. I
That
love
should be a pleasurable thing.
Listen, I delight in truth. I really do. And the beauty of what he's doing, the way he's doing it, is the fact that he's doing it in a comedic manner, which for some people that they learn, everybody learns differently. You know what I'm saying? So it really helps to just kind of soften the blow so that you can really get it in your head. Oh, this is what's going on. Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what they're doing? This where we at? Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
this where we at. Okay.
Yes.
I want to show you something because I've heard a lot, and you guys know how I feel about factions. First of all, you know how I feel about factions, okay? And factions oftentimes have a different narrative than what the Father's kingdom narrative is. And so we know that we're in a season where people want to change, and Daniel says this. I believe in Daniel 11, it's either Daniel 11 or Daniel 7, that the adversary thinks to change times and laws. Okay, and so what is he doing by changing that? He wants to change the time because he understands that everything has a perfect timing, that the Father does all things in his time, right? In his time, but his time is kairos, right? So that means that the sons have to recognize the difference between the chronology that is set in the earth and the kairos that is set in the divine realm, in eternity. We've got to grow to the place where we know certain things and we're able to step into the space in our maturity that the Father is calling us to. But this takes maturity. So chronology or chronos is what is used as a tutor and a governor of our life until we get to the space of time mastery. Did you know that chronos is a God? A lot of the things that we deal with are gods, and we don't know that that's what we're dealing with yet. Psalm 82 began to give us the discussion about where the Father is seated and that there is a council of mighty ones. There's a council of the gods, and he sits as the God over those gods. He is the leading, the ruling council, and he's often scolding the gods. He's often, and understand this, the gods both celestial and terrestrial, okay? Because this is what the Master said. He said, did not Psalm say that ye are gods and all of you are children of the Most High? This is what he's saying to the Pharisees, because they understand that if you say that you're the son of God, that makes you a God. And nobody is saying that. Nobody here is saying that. That's the problem for us, that you think that that's who you are, that you say that's who you are. You understand? People will have a problem with you when you begin to identify, when you begin to know who you are. That's when all hell begins to break loose. So you got to understand, what does the adversary want to do? He wants to convince you that if you're just doing things like, see, like a lot of people are really comfortable with just being the smartest person in the room or being the most deep person in the room and all that kind of stuff. They kind of, it kind of gives them some kind of points. I don't know what the points are, but the thing is not that. It's the fact that you're operating from a place that has a tangible evidence. And when you're operating from a place that has a tangible evidence, it's no longer just you wearing phylacteries. Because that's what a lot of people do. They think that their spirituality is based on the size of their phylactery. Figuratively. The size of your phylactery and all of the motions that you're doing doesn't have anything to do with you doing the assignment. Because when you do the assignment, it's something that has to manifest. There are things that must manifest when you're doing the assignment. And that's when people get upset with you. Now, people will talk about you and say, oh, you think you're this or you think you're that when you're just wearing phylacteries. You know, but when you start operating in a place of manifestation, that's when the adversary is in his heated mode. He's angry about that because your whole life, that's what all the trauma has been about in your life. And this is why you got to shake the trauma. This is why you got to release the trauma. You got to let it go. You cannot be holding on, you cannot be holding on to everything that's happened to you in your life because it's interrupting your frequency. It's causing you to dial in to a station that has white noise. You're not able to clearly hear what the Father is saying because the station that you're tuned into has so much white noise on it. It has so much frequency interruptions on it You need to get your antenna fine-tuned this morning. And as we're fine-tuning our antenna in the rest of this Yom, Lord, I did put Yom Kippur. It's Yom Teruah, y'all. I want it to be Yom Kippur so bad. Do you hear me? I'm changing that right now. I looked at it and I saw it a couple of times. I caught myself a couple times. I can't even change it in the live. Okay, yeah, I did. I changed it. Okay. There we go. It switched. Listen, you got to shake, release, and let go of the trauma. And how do you do that? In his presence. You do it by prayer and fasting. You do it by giving. You have to operate the systems that you know how to operate to break a loose from the captivity. There was a word that the Father gave me many years ago. It was release the remnant. I remember when he gave that to me, it was some years ago, and we used to declare it in intercession, that the remnant be released. Release the remnant. Why? Because they need to worship the Father. They need to be released to worship him. There are a lot of things that we could be worshiping, a lot of ideas and concepts that mankind is worshiping, but it's not what the Father has ordained. It's not what he's saying. So when I tell you I can't stand factions, I can't stand them, because they're always trying to alter what the Father has said. So we got all of these things, and it's clear. They will clearly say, well, we do know that, this is not necessarily what the scripture says, but what the faction will do is they will take something and they'll say something is attached to something, but it's really not. Okay, so let me share with you. Exodus chapter 12, verse 2 declares that this month, this is what he told Moshe to say to the people. He said now to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, he said, this month is the beginning of months for you. It shall be the first month of your year. Okay, this is what I want you to tell the congregation, that this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. We know that that is in the space of Passover. Okay, that's in that space. But if we're listening to what the factions are saying, then we think that things are mixed together, and they're not mixed together. It's just that things ride on the coattail of something else to make it more, to make it more authentic in the eyes of the people. So if I say that I'm a ruling entity, or I say that, this is my area and this is where we come from, right? That's right. This is where we come from. This is what we come out of, right? Then, people are more inclined to believe a thing. But the Father has established a thing, and that's what he meant. He didn't establish separate things. He established what he established, and that's what he meant. He understands that there was another way. Understand this. He understands that there was another way that something was being done. But for whatever reason, he decided to reset the clock. He decided to reset the calendar, to reestablish the place that the first of months would come out of. He said, listen, this space where I am creating this covenant is going to be the space where the beginning of the year starts for my people. Because this is the beginning. This is the new beginning. That was the new beginning. That relationship that he wanted to forge with that nation called Israel, that was the new beginning. He said, so this shall be the first of months. You've come out of captivity, so now we can begin. Let's start here. We understand that there is, what we're looking at, 5783, that we're looking at the years from where man was recreated, the recreation of mankind. We get that. But you got to understand something. When the Father said, this is the beginning, this is the beginning. Everything else, this is the seventh month. We can't have a new year at the seventh month. I'm sorry, we can't. That's not what new means. It's not what the new year is about. Okay? The new begins at the space he declares the original reset. Absolutely. That was the first original reset. He said, this is where we're marking the beginning of the year. Now, the funny thing about that is that, even if they were originally, which we don't know because none of us were there, and not even the people that are Jewish, can say that they were there at that time and that this has been information passed down. The Talmud and the Torah are two different things. And we got to be very careful as sons of Yah. Because the Father said this through his Son. He said, be careful. He said, watch the leaven of the Pharisees. Watch it. He said, now there are some things that they say that are true, do that. But he said, you got to have enough sense to know the difference between what's authentic and what is not. You got to have enough sense, spiritual sense, to understand that the Babylonian Talmud is what it is. It's Babylonian, which means it is confusion by mixing what the Father instituted, what was original, with something that he never decided should be. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Does it have some insight in it that matches the insight that the word reveals to us? Absolutely. But again, that is the way for you to be able to identify it. By you're going to identify it as something authentic or something that is of great value if it's connected to something that is authentic and of great value. That's just like somebody going to a space and saying, yeah, I'm the guest of somebody very important, right? We saw it on the movies all the time, right? How did people get their names? They would get their names on the guest list, however they would do it, right? Because if they could be seen on the guest list, then they could gain entry, right? If they could be seen on the guest list of whatever this big event is, anytime somebody wanted to overthrow an adversary, they would find the space that they were going to be meeting at. And whatever big celebration or event was going to be taking place, they would make sure that their name was on the guest list. And if it was digital, it was easy to compromise it. So they would get on the guest list. And as long as they were on that guest list, when they got to the door, they had entry. But if they got to the door and something went wrong, they would have to create a diversion in order to gain entry. Now that was so, listen, what the Father just said was just so amazing. So you're either going to be on the guest list or you're going to create a diversion. But either one of those, in the case that I'm speaking of, are forced entry. They're not by invitation. They're not by invitation. Prophet, you got anything you want to share?
Yes, I was going to say, you were talking about the leveling.
Yes.
The commingling. That brewing, if you will. We have to be mindful of that because we have accepted a lot of stuff that now is so hard to separate or so hard to bring truth to because it has been introduced, commingled, and have set root within the body. You know, there are certain types of parasites that are a part of your body naturally. But then you have parasites that are not supposed to be in the body. And now we as a people don't understand what is the good parasite versus the bad. We say, oh, we got to get the bugs out of us. But then again, you have some that are designed for a task. We have to be careful about the commingling to where we don't get lost in a general definition or in a general type of work. Because we have allowed so many things to come in that is not of the body. That breach, that commingling, that leveling. And we when we talk about the leveling, we have to talk about these so-called standards, these so-called organizations, these so-called fundraisers, these so-called charities, these so-called assignments, these so-called good Samaritan
Mm-hmm.
acts
Mm-hmm.
that are not a part of the body, but have now festered, that have now grown. Because people say, "Oh, you got a mole. Oh, it's just a mole." Not understanding that's an overgrowth.
Yeah.
That's a takeover in that space of skin that you're not supposed to have. But we think it's normal because mama, daddy, sister, brother, great, 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 great papa's had it and all this other stuff. We have to be careful of the leaven.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We have to be careful of what has become so common to us that is not supposed to be in the body, that was not designed.
Yeah. Absolutely. It was not originally designed, and that's why I was sharing in the comments section that we gotta identify the fact that any quote unquote people who needed to use the authentic to derive an entirely new people. Again, this is that tree of the knowledge of good and evil again. I'm going to take something that exists and I'm going to commingle it. I'm going to mix it with something else and come up with something that is ish. It is like something, but it is not that. Zionist agendas, absolutely. And this would be what the word refers to as grievous wolves that have entered in.
Yeah.
And these are the violent that violently take by force the kingdom from the people. How do we not know certain histories? Like, have you ever heard of Pope Sixtus? Listen, I'm going to see if I can pull up an image of him. He was actually the third, Pope Sixtus the third. Do you know that his name is 666? It's 6 3 times. Sixtus means 6, but then he's the third, that means 3 times. He was a friend with one of the what was that particular was somebody that we do know and have heard of. He was a friend of, but we've never heard of him. And why have we never heard of him? Why have we never heard of him? From 432 to 440, he was alive. And we never heard of him. But in his age, in his era, he was the one that was the anti. He was against the Christ, against the appointment. He was that one that was the perdition. You understand what I'm saying? He was that one in that age that established the things that were the new order in order for that coming of that time to be realized. Because understand, there have been many comings. Every age has something that must be revealed. Every age. We're just looking at this thing as a long line. One long line. It's not just one long line. I'm going to pull up something for you guys. I'm going to do it quickly too. I bet you've never seen this before. This is the kind of stuff you find when you're fasting. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff you come into the knowledge of, whether you found it yourself or you heard it. These are the things you come into the knowledge of when you're properly connected. That's why connections mean everything. This is why godly connections are important. Because if we do not have the connections, then we do not receive from that source. We don't receive. You got to be connected in order to get the energy. To have light, you got to have a connection to the source of light. And all of the sons are sources of light. In whatever sphere of influence the Father has given, you are the source of light. And if you are not shining, then people are going to remain blind. The people that you're in those spheres of influence. They need your light in order for the scales to come off, in order for them to not any longer be blind. I'm gonna put up something real quick because I'm gonna pull this up for you guys. Yes. Now Moshe was called the Hebrew, but they were either called Hebrew or Israelites, the Hebrews or the Israelites. But the Hebrew, that's another situation. The Hebrew Israelites is another one of those things where somebody has taken something and created something because it sounds good to them. Yes, Abraham was a Hebrew. He was a Hebrew, right? But Israel, like, comes out of the fact that they were of Israel, that particular man, right? So this is where they come and they try to meld the two together. But this is why the battle is actually between what it's between still, because Abraham was also the father of Ishmael, right? And Ishmael is where we get the Islamic side of things. And so this is what the battle is. The battle is over. Abraham is both of their father. That's not in dispute here. But the truth of the matter is that Isaac, or Yitzchak, was the promise. That was whom the father desired to begin his to further his promise with Abraham. That was the beginning of his lineage. Things are connected. All right, I'm gonna put up this video.
No parallel in modern history. The coronavirus pandemic has no parallel in modern history. It is our defining moment.
Those are the words of Klaus Schwab, head of the World Economic Forum, in COVID-19, the Great Reset.
People assume we are just going back to the good old world which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is, let's say, fiction. It will not happen.
At the latest World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, Schwab set the tone for the conference with his glowing introduction of the opening speaker.
We now welcome His Excellency Xi Jinping, President of the People's Republic of China.
Xi laid out his vision of a coordinated global economy.
Major economies should see the world as one community and coordinate the objectives, intensity, and pace of fiscal and monetary policies.
This ideal of a united globe with a coordinated economy managed by experts captures Schwab's vision of the post-COVID world.
We have to redefine our social contract.
These grand proclamations, the ominous book title, and Schwab's odd personal style have led many people to speculate that the Great Reset is part of a conspiracy of global financial elites and politicians to depopulate the planet so they can more easily institute one world government, or even that COVID was engineered to that end.
Remember, the stated goal by these people,
billionaire transhumanist elites, the globalists that all get together every year,
is depopulation of the planet,
a transhumanist revolution
to make people chronically sick,
that results in the death of the vast majority of the world population, and out of that cataclysm, a new super race.
I don't buy it. Imagine the amount of coordination and airtight secrecy needed for these kinds of far-reaching conspiracies of global domination to succeed. They'd be exposed and fall apart, especially in the age of the internet. Instead of spinning our wheels, searching for a secret agenda, let's just look at the one that's right out in the open.
I think we are moving from short-term to long-term, from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism.
What China...
Okay, y'all know how I feel about the shareholder and the stakeholder piece, right? Because anytime you start talking about shareholders and stakeholders, we're talking about how the money is moving. So anything that has a stakeholder or a shareholder is corporation. And first of all, I love how the first guy put it. He said, like, I don't remember did anybody vote him in? to make him the person over humanity? Who voted him in? But we have these organizations, these intergovernmental organizations that have nothing to do necessarily with government, but have everything to do with government. And who's voted them in? But people are not aware of all the things that are happening undercurrently because they're so entertained by the things that they look at. They're so busy being entertained by video games, so busy being entranced and entrained by the news, by their TV shows, by all of these different things that are meant to be distractions from what the reality is. Just listen to the words that people are saying. And if you can listen to the words, see what the adversary is desired to do in changing the frequency of sons. When he changes the frequency, he changes the reception. And so a lot of people don't even have basic cognitive identification markers anymore. They don't have reasoning, deductive reasoning skills anymore, because the only thing that you reason is the thing that makes you feel good. The Father's saying, now I need my sons to awaken and understand that their reasoning needs to go beyond where it's been. Reasoning just to your feelings doesn't help you, because if you're reasoning just to your feelings, you're always going to be moved sensorily, outwardly, fleshly. But if you begin to be moved in the space of your spiritual senses, then that's the unseen realm. That's a place nobody can alter for you, because you're the one that's managing that realm. You're deciding what your proximity is to your Father. You're deciding what that relationship looks like. You're deciding how much you will receive. Look at Daniel. Daniel's in a room. He's saying, this is boggling my mind. I've got to stay in a space until I get clarity on what this is. Mankind don't get clarity like that. They want to watch TV but need clarity. They want to do everything while they need clarity, like it's going to just fall out the sky. No, you have to seek out the clarity. It's the glory of Yah to conceal a matter, but it's the honor of kings to dig it out. Come on. I'm going to play it some more. It is intended to be that way so we won't be edified. It's time management. And it's really, sister, it's really mind management. Because the mind is what determines the time. But it's all about managing the things and the resources. You got to seek the thing. If you ask, if you seek, if you not, listen, he's given it all to us. But most people are too lazy to go after what's already been given.
China, the World Economic Forum, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren to succeed. They'd be exposed and fall apart, especially in the age of the internet. Instead of spinning our wheels, searching for a secret agenda, let's just look at the one that's right out in the open.
I think we are moving from short-term to long-term, from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism.
What China, the World Economic Forum, and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren have in common is that they favor so-called stakeholder capitalism, which is a euphemism for making companies answer first to special interests. They want to reorganize corporate boards to include representatives from labor, environmental, and social justice groups. Warren proposed a bill to require 40% of large corporate board seats be elected by workers. In China, the state simply owns or controls a majority stake in most of the country's largest firms. The World Economic Forum and many state leaders believe global coordination and global governance is essential to manage global problems, climate change, international financial instability, and future pandemics. A crucial flaw in Schwab's Great Reset is that it puts too much faith in the ability of governments to re-engineer society in a way that better serves the needs and desires of all citizens. He wants a rethinking of capitalism that escapes the tyranny of GDP growth, so that companies create goods and services for the common good, instead of maximizing profits. The phrase common good points to his fundamental misunderstanding of capitalism, which is nothing new. Central planners were using this idea to maximize their own power at the expense of individual freedom back in the 1940s, when Nobel Prize-winning economist F.A. Hayek wrote The Road to Serfdom, which would go on to sell over 2 million copies. The welfare and happiness of millions cannot be measured on a single scale of less and more, Hayek writes, and depends on a great many things that can be provided in an infinite variety of combinations. Every single one of the billions of people who populate this planet have unique goals and desires that are impossible to reduce to a unified whole, whether that's GDP or whatever supposedly holistic metric the WEF wants to replace it with. Profits are a signal to entrepreneurs that they are satisfying the disparate needs of their customers.
One of the great lessons of the past 5 centuries in Europe and America is this: acute crises contribute to boosting the power of the state. It's always been the case, and there is no reason why it should be different with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Schwab is right that the war is the health of the state, as the writer Randolph Bourne once put it. And the government's response to COVID has been similar to military conflict in terms of the cost and the chaos it's engendered. World Wars I and II and the Great Depression ushered in a powerful modern welfare and warfare state that irreversibly altered America and the world. But I'm more optimistic this time, thanks in large part to the power of technology to provide everyday citizens with an exit. Instead of the Great Reset, in which sclerotic 20th century institutions accumulate even more power, I think we're entering the Great Escape. This is possible because technological progress is outpacing the ability of the state to control and regulate it. Governments will have no choice but to abandon their efforts to construct physical and metaphorical walls. Technology can be designed to facilitate decentralization, in which the flow of money and information can't be controlled. Ideas emerge from the bottom up. Expecting governments and international bodies to orient every large company towards some widely agreed upon common good assumes that many of the very institutions that bungled the COVID-19 response can competently handle the planet's most intractable problems. My hope is that after witnessing the colossal failure of governments in the face of a global crisis, many more people will be looking for a different approach. There's evidence everywhere of the Great Escape. The US population shift away from expensive, restrictive, and poorly governed states and cities, spurred on by the rise of remote work, the exodus from government-run schools, the growing use of cryptocurrency, the popularity of encrypted private communication platforms, and the expanding reach of independent voices in our increasingly decentralized media. Hayek called central planning the fatal conceit, writing that the curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design. And Schwab even touches on this idea, writing that complexity creates limits to our knowledge and understanding of things. It might thus be that today's increasing complexity literally overwhelms the capabilities of politicians in particular and decision makers in general to make well-informed decisions. He dubs this quantum politics, but never quite explains how policymakers will realistically overcome this dilemma. Maybe there's record low trust in our institutions because the people running them are attempting the impossible, planning the future for billions of people. Humiliating to pride as it may be, Hayek wrote in The Constitution of Liberty, advancements of civilization are often happy accidents, and policymakers could and should be more focused on securing the freedom that allows such decentralized experimentation and accidental progress to occur. The fear of a great escape, of losing control, is understandable because there are systemic risks that could destroy human civilization, including future natural or man-made pandemics, runaway inflation, and ecological disaster.
Small boats may not survive a storm, but a giant ship is strong enough to brave a storm.
But if we're all stuck in the same large ship, in the same storm, we're all going down with it when the winds finally get bad enough. Concentrated power itself presents an existential risk. A bad intervention applied to economies of the entire world at once can bring down the entire system. But the distributed power and humble trial and error of markets and decentralized governance brings progress in fits and starts with less risk of total ruin. What Schwab, Xi, and central planners around the world miss is that when securing the rights of the individual comes first, the rest tends to follow. The Great Escape from the 20th century is underway, and there might be nothing they can do to stop it. The question is, do they make getting there easy, or does it happen the hard way?
This takes me back to something that the Father had been sharing with me over the years. Somebody just texted me about being tested positive for COVID. See, this is one of the reasons why the Father keeps inviting people into a space so that they can learn of Him, so that they can identify things. But this takes me back to the space that the Father was communicating with me about these maps and about His reset, because He showed me two maps. It was a literary map, and then there was a industrial map, a corporate map. And He began to talk to me about these maps, and I began to see the suns in spaces. He said, listen, all of this is going to change. And so while, what they're doing is very grandiose, the thing that you can't knock the fact that they have a grandiose idea. I mean, what sons have come to the table with a grandiose idea that they could find enough people to help them execute it? I mean, a lot of times what people are carrying, people are not aware of, so we kind of capitalize on the things that are external. We capitalize on the things that we think we can get access to, not understanding that the treasure is in the earthen vessel. That's where it is. But the truth of the matter is that the factions, or the religious industrial complex, or the church industrial complex, doesn't look at it from the perspective of the people. They're looking at it from the perspective of what the people can offer as far as their tangible goods, but they're not looking at the eternal goods that the people come with in order to begin to create a system that the Father has already declared. They have grandiose ideas. Now understand, at the end of it, the kingdom is going to be given into it's going to be given to the sons, okay? To the saints of the Most High. That's where the kingdom is going. It's given to us. They're not going to be able to pull off everything they're trying to pull off. And a lot of times they're talking about things. This is one of the things you can't knock about them. They will talk about what they haven't even accomplished. They'll talk about it to put it in your mind, because they need to feed off of your energy. They need to feed off your frequency. They need you to believe in them in order for it to manifest. And you don't understand all of the mechanisms that they're using in order to bring a thing to pass. Yes, a lot of times when they're bringing things to the forefront of stuff that they've been working on for a very long time, and they've already had this thing in operation, they're just now allowing the public to see it. But those things took some time because they needed the morale of man in order to manifest it. So they put it in movies. It was just a concept. They put it in spaces where man can say, ooh, that's nice. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, okay. And so now that thing is in the atmosphere, it's like, okay, so we gotta do this. But they're getting intel from the watchers. The watchers are giving them this intel that they have to build and to create and to structure and make these frameworks, to create these dynamics. Look at this right here. I was talking about it. I'm going to go back to it because I don't want to leave it. I was talking about how much I hate the factions and how the factions take, how it is that the factions take a thing that the Father has said, and we saw it. We saw it even with the phylacteries. We saw it. This is what they do. This is how they move. He says a thing and they take it and they make it something, something that people can praise them for. They make it something that they can be seen as deep or spiritual or, some kind of, master in an area, right? It's clear where masters are. Masters don't have to announce themselves as masters. It's clear that they are that. Okay? But when I was talking about that, I was dealing with this whole changing of the name, changing Yom Teruah into Rosh Hashanah, and changing things around. Like, why are they changing it? Because they want to make that thing the thing. And they specifically say this is their feast. And what did the Father say? I hate your feast. Away with your feast. He said, away with that. I have nothing to do with that. Right? When we look at the King Jeroboam, he didn't just make one golden calf, he made two, in order to keep the people from going out of the state, out of the place that they were in. In other words, I don't want them to see a whole lot of things. I don't want them to be in a space where they're continually growing. Because see, when you hold people in a space, the growth is managed. You can manage their growth by holding them to a space, right? So if they're traveling like they've always traveled to the place where the Father said his name, to go and to worship, to go to Jerusalem, to have this appointment with the Father, then that means they're leaving my domain. And they're going to that space. And then they got to come back. But it's a whole lot of stuff they're going to see on the way back. They might decide to move their location. They might, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up some golden calves. Not only am I going to do that, but this 7th month that we're in, that we're getting ready to celebrate these feast days, these appointments, he literally changed it from the 7th month. He created an 8th month. Hello? He created an 8th month. Now, he's a king in Israel, and he should have written Teruah, which means he should know the dates. But because he's the king, he can make a decree. You understand what I'm saying? So let's go there real quick. 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 28. And this kind of goes on both sides of the fence for both things, because all of that is secular to me. Whatever faction it's from, whether it's the government of factions or the religious of factions, it's all secular. It's all in opposition to what the Father is saying and what he desires to do in the sons. Go to 1 Kings chapter 12. I guess we'll read the entire thing here. Oh, what's our time looking like? I'm just talking like we ain't got no. Okay, we got 11 minutes. Yeah, you said away with that. I have nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with it. That's something you created. That's something you're doing. That is not how I designed this thing to be done. Right? Let's look at this. Where was I? 1 Kings. Okay. 1 Kings chapter 12. Is that what I gave you guys? Let me see. How far am I going to go into this? Let's go further down. You guys can read this in your own time. This is where the kingdom was divided, Rehoboam and Jeroboam. And we know that Rehoboam was actually in relation to Saul, but Jeroboam was a servant. And it's bad when the father gives authority to the servant. And that's really what we're looking at right now, because the sons would not take their rightful place. The authority was left in the hands of a servant. Okay, so let's think about that for a minute. When this adversary approached them in the garden space, he actually was a servant to them, not a lord over them. But Adam, the first Adam, in his ignorance and in his appetite, transferred the authority that he operated in for dominion to this adversary, to the servant. He was supposed to be the one that was in prison, just like the father had kicked the adversary out of his former estate and would not any longer give him access. This is why he was pissed. This is why the word in Revelation says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because Satan has come down and he's pretty pissed off. Now he's there with you. He has no access into the heavenly realms. You got to understand his demotion and understand why he operates the way that he does now. Because before he was able to accuse men to the Father, and now he spends all of his time accusing the Father to men. Men accuse each other. They've taken on that adversarial position, the spirit of the accuser, right? As it pertains to the sons of Yah, particularly. So we see that this is where the kingdom was divided. So we'll go to 1 Kings chapter 12, and we'll go to verse 16 to start. Yeah. I might have to go above that because I want you to have the context of this. Let's just read it. Let's just read it from the top. Okay. 1 Kings 12:1. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel would come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. And he said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days, then come again to me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? And he spake unto him, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. We know that you don't ever get the high counsel on the same level that you are, because it's common. It's common. Y'all all know the same thing. You all operate the same way, so it has to be a higher counsel, right? He said unto them, What counsel give ye, that we may answer this people? Who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke which thy father did put upon us lighter. And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him. What am I reading from? I don't know what I'm reading from, but it feels a little different. Spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father had made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. I don't know if you got that image. That's serious. And now, whereas my father did lade you with heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father hath chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king had appointed, saying, Come to me again the third day. And the king answered the people roughly, and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father has also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from Yah, that he might perform his saying, which Yah spake to Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Now you got to understand the backstory. This prophet had already spoken to Jeroboam and told him that the kingdom was being given to him, that the kingdom was going to be divided, and a part of that kingdom was going to be given to him. So now this is the reason why Rehoboam is going the way he's going, because it's been prophesied, and the prophecy must now align so that Jeroboam can come into that space. So when all Israel saw the king hearken not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David? Neither have we here inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute, and all Israel stoned him with stones, that he died. Therefore King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee Jerusalem. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. Shemaiah's prophecy is what we're getting ready to look at now, coming to pass. And it came to pass when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again, and this you'll find it in 2 Chronicles 11, verses 1 through 4. When all Israel heard this, that they sent and called him unto the congregation and made him king over all Israel. There was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. And when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin. Now look at what's happening here. Judah is with Rehoboam, with the tribe of Benjamin, 184,000 chosen men. I want you to see the separation, because in the separation is where the infiltration, or where the usage of the name Yehuda is going to be captured. It's going to be captured because it's separated. Holy Spirit just said that it's going to be captured because it's separated. In that separation is the capturing of that term Yehuda, which turns into Jewish. Okay? So let's look at this. It's 110. We can come back to this, or we can do an overflow real quick, because I got some more stuff I want to show you guys. Listen, we're going to do a quick overflow, and we'll meet you on the other side. We're still in Yom Teruah, and we're enjoying this time. It's amazing. This is one of the most interesting Yom Teruahs I've ever been in. I've ever been used to do. This is the most interesting. And I believe the Father is doing something absolutely amazing. absolutely amazing in this space. Okay, so you guys meet me on the other side. Invite some folks, meet me on the other side, and we're going to do an overflow. Blessings, brother, I see you. We're going to do an overflow. All right, peace to your house, prophet. Meet me on the other side. Yep, Yom Teruah, that's where we are. I love y'all. The body's not a me thing, it's a we thing. Peace to your house.